She was left at the altar and had only hours to get married or lose her family's company. Desperate, she agreed to marry a homeless man who appeared in her path. The next day, he showed up unrecognizable, elegant, intelligent, and full of secrets. Who was this man? And why did he seem to know so much about her family's history? If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. We'll continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear in your life. Sophia Mitchell. Blackwell's eyes burned as she waited at the altar of St. Teresa's Cathedral, one of the most traditional in Boston. The cathedral was filled with the most influential personalities in the country, business people, politicians, and public figures who came to witness the union between the sole heiress of the Blackwell Empire and Edward Brandon, son of an important senator. The bouquet of white lilies trembled in her hands as the minutes dragged on. The groom's absence was becoming embarrassing. Murmurs began to fill the sacred space, echoing among the colorful stained glass that projected ghostly lights onto her impeccably white dress. That's when her cell phone vibrated, a text message, brief, cruel. "I can't do this. I'm sorry." Sophia's world collapsed in that instant. The tears she had been holding back finally broke through the barrier of her composure. Her father, August Blackwell, powerful patriarch and chairman of the board of Blackwell Enterprises, quickly approached to support her. His expression was a mixture of concern and barely contained fury. "Let's get out of here, sweetheart," he whispered, trying to protect her from curious gazes and cameras of guests already recording that moment of public humiliation. However, before they could leave, Richard Mitchell, Sophia's distant cousin and vice president of international operations, approached with an almost imperceptible smile on his lips. "What a misfortune, dear cousin," he said, with false solidarity. "Remember the special clause in great-grandfather's will? You have until midnight tonight to be legally married, or controlling interest passes to me." His tone was smooth, but his words carried the poison of years of resentment and ambition. Sophia paled even more. The matrimonial clause was an old tradition in the Blackwell family, inserted by her great-grandfather, who believed that business power should be shared. Each direct heir needed to be married by the age of 30, or before if they assumed the board chairmanship. What seemed like an antiquated and symbolic tradition suddenly transformed into a real trap. "I have a meeting scheduled tomorrow with foreign investors interested in acquiring our operations," continued Richard, adjusting his perfectly aligned tie. "It would be a shame to waste this opportunity for global expansion, don't you think?" Sophia knew what that meant. It wouldn't be expansion, it would be liquidation. Richard planned to sell the company to the Nakamura Group, dismantling decades of history and leaving thousands of employees at the mercy of a ruthless restructuring. "That will never happen," replied August, positioning himself between his daughter and nephew. "We'll find a solution." "The clock is ticking, Uncle," Richard answered, consulting his wristwatch with disdain, "and the law is clear." Sophia couldn't bear it anymore. She tore off her veil and ran out of the church, ignoring her mother's calls and the flashes capturing her desperate escape. She ran directionless through the streets of Boston, her heels echoing on the asphalt while tears blurred her vision. That's when she stumbled and almost fell, being supported by firm, calloused hands. She looked up and saw a man of simple appearance, unshaven and in worn clothes, but with eyes of a deep blue that conveyed a disconcerting calmness. "Are you all right, ma'am?" he asked, with a surprisingly educated voice for someone of such modest appearance. Sophia couldn't respond. Her legs weakened, and she collapsed onto a nearby bench, her wedding dress spreading like a cloud around her. The man sat at a respectful distance. "Sometimes what seems like the end is just a new beginning," he commented, looking ahead, as if speaking to himself. Something in that phrase, in the serenity with which it was said, made Sophia look at the stranger with more attention. There was no pity in his gaze, just a silent understanding that unexpectedly comforted her. "My name is Gabriel," he said, extending a calloused hand. "Sophia," she replied, accepting the greeting. She hesitated for a moment, but something in this man's presence made her trust him. "I was just abandoned at the altar." Gabriel simply nodded, showing neither surprise nor excessive curiosity. "And the worst part," she continued, the words escaping like a confession, "if I'm not married by midnight tonight, I lose control of my family's company to a cousin who intends to sell it to foreigners." Gabriel frowned, finally showing a more visible reaction. "A matrimonial clause in your great-grandfather's will?" he asked. Sophia looked at him in surprise. "How do you know that?" "I've heard about such traditions in traditional families," he responded vaguely. "It's more common than you might think." Sophia's phone rang insistently. It was her mother, Helen Blackwell, a matriarch feared and respected, both in social salons and in the company's boardrooms. "Sophia, for God's sake, where are you?" "Your father is having a blood pressure crisis," the anguished voice echoed on speakerphone. "I'm fine, Mom. I needed some air." "Come back immediately. Richard is already talking to the lawyers about transferring the shares. We need to find a solution before midnight." Gabriel, who was involuntarily listening to the conversation due to the volume, looked at Sophia with a thoughtful expression. When she hung up, he spoke with disconcerting calmness. "I could marry you." Sophia stared at him in disbelief. "What did you say?" "A legal, formal marriage just to fulfill the clause," he explained. "Afterward, when everything is resolved, we can discreetly annul it." "Are you crazy? You don't even know me." "I know enough. I know you're desperate and that there's a lot at stake beyond your wounded pride. Thousands of jobs, from what I understand." Sophia studied the man before her. Who was he really? Why would he offer something like this to a complete stranger? But time was running out and alternatives were scarce. "Why? What would you gain from this?" she asked, suspicious. Gabriel smiled slightly. "Let's say I have my reasons for not liking to see American companies being sold to foreigners. Besides, maybe someday I'll need a favor." Sophia knew it was madness. Marry a stranger she met on the street, but the alternative was to hand over her family's legacy to Richard. She thought about the more than 5,000 employees of Blackwell Enterprises, about the families that depended on the jobs her company generated. "Let's do it," she decided, standing up with renewed determination. "But I need to warn you that my family won't make things easy for you." Gabriel also stood up, straightening his simple shirt. "I never expected life to be easy, Sophia Blackwell." The car sent by Helen arrived minutes later. The driver looked suspiciously at Gabriel, but Sophia was emphatic. "He's coming with me." During the journey to the Blackwell mansion in Beacon Hill, Sophia briefly explained her plan to her mother over the phone. Helen's shouts could be heard even without the speakerphone. Gabriel remained impassive, observing the city through the window of the luxury car, as if this surreal situation was just another ordinary day in his life. When they arrived at the mansion, they were received by a furious Helen, elegant even in her state of indignation, with August at her side, pale and visibly shaken. "Have you completely lost your mind?" Helen vociferated, staring at Gabriel as if he were an intruder. "Who is this? "My future husband," completed Sophia with a firmness that surprised everyone, including herself. The improvised ceremony took place in the garden of the Blackwell mansion, under the watchful eye of a justice of the peace hastily summoned by August. A few minutes before midnight, Sophia and Gabriel exchanged simple rings, hastily purchased. Her yes sounded firm, while his was pronounced with a disconcerting serenity. Richard observed everything from a distance, the whiskey glass in his hand almost shattering under the pressure of his fingers. When the justice declared the couple officially married, the clock in the room marked exactly 11:58 p.m. By 2 minutes, the Blackwell empire would remain in Sophia's hands. After the ceremony, Gabriel was accommodated in one of the guest rooms, under the watchful eye of the servants, who had received express orders from Helen to monitor every movement of the new family member. The next morning, Sophia awoke to the unmistakable aroma of freshly brewed coffee and fresh bread. Following the smell to the kitchen, she found a surprising scene. Gabriel, impeccably dressed in clothes that certainly weren't the same as the day before, preparing breakfast while chatting animatedly with Mrs. Betty, the housekeeper who had served the family for more than 30 years and was known for her distrust of strangers. "Good morning, Sophia," he greeted, with disconcerting naturalness. His hair was brushed back, his beard precisely trimmed, and his hands, which yesterday seemed calloused, now displayed the manicure of an executive. "I hope you slept well, despite the circumstances." Sophia was momentarily speechless. This man seemed completely different from the stranger who had supported her on the street. There was an elegance in his movements, a confidence that didn't match the image of the simple man from the day before. "Who are you really?" she asked, accepting the cup of coffee he offered her. "Exactly who I said I am. Gabriel Oliver." "At your service," he replied with a slight smile. "I'm just more presentable today." Helen entered the kitchen at that moment, stopping short at seeing the domestic scene unfolding. Her eyes scanned Gabriel with evident surprise before narrowing in suspicion. "Mr. Oliver, I'd like to have a word with you." "Alone," she declared, indicating her private office with an imperious gesture. Gabriel nodded, drying his hands on a dish towel before following the matriarch. Sophia tried to protest, but her mother's look silenced her instantly. In the office, decorated with austere elegance and filled with photographs of the Blackwell family history, Helen was direct. "What do you really want? Money? Social position? I want to know your price to discreetly disappear after this farce has served its purpose." Gabriel sat comfortably in the leather chair in front of the imposing desk, seeming strangely at ease in that intimidating environment. "Mrs. Blackwell, I understand your concern. I truly do. But I have no interest in money or scandals. My only goal is to help your daughter maintain control of what legitimately belongs to her." "Nobody does anything without expecting something in return," Helen retorted, her astute eyes studying his every reaction. "Perhaps I simply believe that American companies should remain in American hands," he answered calmly. "And how does a man I found wearing simple clothes on the street know so much about business policies?" she questioned. Gabriel smiled slightly. "You'd be surprised at what one can learn by observing the world around them." He paused as if considering something, and then added, "Speaking of which, did you know that this house was designed by the same architect who designed the first Blackwell Enterprises factory in 1932? Anthony Blackwell, your father-in-law, insisted on keeping the same Art Deco motifs in both projects as a symbol of the integration between family and business." Helen visibly paled. That specific detail was known only to family members and a few historians. The mansion and the original factory had indeed been designed to mirror each other, a whim of old Anthony that few understood. "How do you know that?" she asked, her voice momentarily losing its habitual firmness. "I've read a lot about great American business families," he answered vaguely. "The history of the Blackwells has always particularly fascinated me." Before Helen could continue her interrogation, they were interrupted by Sophia, who entered the office without knocking. "We need to go to the company. Richard has called an extraordinary board meeting for this morning." Gabriel stood up immediately. "Let's go then. It wouldn't be prudent to let him control the narrative." On the way to the headquarters of Blackwell Enterprises, an impressive glass and steel building in Boston's financial center, Sophia observed Gabriel from the corner of her eye. He observed the city through the limousine window, occasionally making precise comments about the buildings they passed, demonstrating a surprising knowledge of architecture and urban history. "You're not who you appear to be," Sophia finally commented. "Nobody is," he replied simply. When they arrived at the company, they were received by curious looks and poorly disguised whispers. The news of the altar abandonment and subsequent improvised marriage had already spread, fueled by photos circulating on social media. In the boardroom, Richard waited with a confident smile, flanked by executives from the Nakamura Corporation and his legal team. His smile momentarily faltered when he saw Sophia enter with Gabriel at her side. "Dear cousin, glad you could attend," he said, quickly regaining his composure. "And this must be your last-minute husband. Congratulations on the lightning wedding." Sophia ignored the provocation, taking her place at the head of the table. This meeting was not authorized by me, Richard. As board chairman, I am the one who should convene extraordinary sessions. I merely anticipated an urgent need, cousin, he answered smoothly. Our friends from Nakamura came especially from Japan to discuss the acquisition proposal. It would be discourteous to send them away without at least hearing them out. The Japanese executive, Hiroshi Nakamura, respectfully inclined his head. Miss Blackwell, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. Your cousin has told us much about your brilliance in business. Mrs. Oliver, technically, Gabriel corrected, speaking for the first time since they entered the room. His voice, calm and controlled, attracted all eyes. And I'm certain that my wife's brilliant strategy for the next quarter will make any acquisition offer significantly below the company's real value. Richard laughed, an artificial sound that didn't reach his eyes. And who would you be to give opinions on corporate strategies? From what I heard, just yesterday you were wearing clothes that would barely fit in our maintenance department. Gabriel wasn't shaken. Appearances frequently deceive, Mr. Mitchell, just like financial statements manipulated to artificially depreciate the value of stocks before a purchase proposal. A heavy silence fell over the room. Nakamura's lawyers exchanged uneasy glances. Are you insinuating something, Mr.? questioned Hiroshi, cordiality giving way to caution. Oliver. Gabriel Oliver, he responded, maintaining a cordial tone. And I'm not insinuating anything. Just observing that, according to the quarterly reports of the last 2 years, there has been a systematic depreciation of Blackwell's real estate assets, particularly in the northeast branches, without a corresponding real devaluation in that region's real estate market. Richard visibly paled while the rest of the board began to murmur. Sophia looked at Gabriel with a mixture of surprise and growing admiration. How could he know such specific details of the company's finances? One of the oldest board members, Albert Mendez, a man who had been August's confidant for decades, cleared his throat to get attention. Mr. Oliver raises an interesting point. I myself questioned those valuations at the time, but was assured by the financial department that they were routine accounting adjustments. Perhaps we should re-examine these adjustments before proceeding with any discussion about acquisition, suggested Sophia, regaining control of the situation. Gentlemen from Nakamura, I apologize for the inconvenience, but we'll need to postpone these negotiations until we have absolute certainty of the accuracy of our financial statements. Hiroshi Nakamura nodded stiffly, casting a penetrating look at Richard. We completely understand. Financial integrity is fundamental for any transaction of this magnitude. The meeting ended in a climate of palpable tension. As the Japanese executives were leaving, Richard approached Gabriel, his face contorted in a mask of controlled fury. I don't know who you are or what you intend, but I'll find out. And when I do, you'll wish you had never crossed my path. Gabriel maintained his impassive expression. Fascinating how some people confuse threats with arguments, don't you think? Back in the limousine, Sophia could no longer contain her questions. How did you know those financial details? Even I wasn't aware of those specific irregularities. Gabriel looked out the window for a moment before answering. Let's say I've been following the trajectory of Blackwell Enterprises for a long time, and some discrepancies are evident to those who know where to look. Who are you really, Gabriel Oliver? Sophia insisted. Someone who has as much interest as you in seeing the company prosper under American control, he answered, his blue eyes fixed on hers with a disconcerting intensity. For now, that's all you need to know. Sophia wanted to press more, demand complete answers, but something in his expression stopped her. There was a hidden pain there, a secret that she wasn't yet ready to uncover. That night, during dinner at the Blackwell mansion, Gabriel continued to surprise everyone with his detailed knowledge about the family and company history. He spoke fluently about strategic decisions made decades before, cited numbers and dates with precision, and seemed to know every detail of the company's current operations. August, initially skeptical, began to show signs of reluctant approval. Helen maintained her distrust, but even she occasionally found herself nodding at Gabriel's insightful observations. What no one noticed was when Gabriel discreetly withdrew after dinner, leaving through the back of the mansion before dawn. Sophia, awakened by a disturbing nightmare, saw through the window as he disappeared into the darkness, walking with purpose toward an unknown destination. The curiosity that already consumed her transformed into an almost obsessive need to discover the truth about the man she had married. Who was Gabriel Oliver? Where did his intimate knowledge about the Blackwells come from? And more importantly, what was his true purpose in this strange alliance? In the following weeks, Gabriel's presence at Blackwell Enterprises caused a remarkable transformation. His strategic suggestions, always presented with calculated humility during meetings, began to yield almost immediate fruits. The innovation department, dormant for years under August's conservative management, gained new life. With the implementation of projects that seemed strangely familiar to company veterans. "It's as if we're rescuing the original spirit of the company," commented Albert Mendez during a board meeting, looking with admiration at the charts showing 18% growth in last month's sales. Sophia observed everything with a mixture of gratitude and growing uneasiness. On one hand, Gabriel was saving the company she loved. On the other, he remained an enigma. Every morning he left before dawn and returned only for breakfast, impeccably dressed and ready for another day of work. When questioned about his outings, he would gracefully change the subject or offer vague explanations about personal commitments. On a particularly busy afternoon, Sophia was surprised by the unexpected visit of Edward, her ex-fiancé. Pale and visibly distressed, he asked to speak with her privately. Reluctantly but moved by curiosity, Sophia agreed to receive him in the mansion's garden. "I came to ask for forgiveness," Edward began, his eyes avoiding hers, "and to explain why I did what I did." "A bit late for explanations, don't you think?" replied Sophia, maintaining her composure despite the emotional storm his presence provoked. "It was your cousin Richard," revealed Edward, finally finding the courage to face her. "He discovered something about my family, old secrets that could destroy us. He threatened to expose everything if I didn't abandon you at the altar." Sophia felt her blood freeze in her veins. "What kind of secrets?" "My father, he was involved in illegal business in the past, money laundering for influential politicians. Richard discovered documents, evidence that could send my father to prison even after so many years." The revelation fell like a bomb. Sophia had always considered the Brandon family an example of rectitude and business ethics. The image of Senator Brandon, always so vocal against corruption, crumbled before this confession. "Why are you telling me this now?" she questioned. "Because I can't live with this guilt anymore," Edward answered, running his hands through his hair in a nervous gesture. "And because Richard continues to pressure me. Now he wants me to provide information about you and your husband." Before Sophia could respond, they were interrupted by Gabriel's arrival, who was walking calmly through the garden as if just admiring the flowers. His expression, however, made it clear that he had heard at least part of the conversation. "Mr. Brandon, what a pleasant surprise," commented Gabriel, extending his hand in a greeting that Edward hesitantly accepted. "I believe we have much to discuss about blackmail and manipulation, don't we?" Edward paled even more, if that was possible. "Who are you really?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. Gabriel smiled enigmatically. "Someone who knows Mr. Richard Mitchell's tactics very well, and who perhaps can help you with your family dilemma." The meeting was interrupted by the shrill sound of sirens. In the distance, a column of black smoke rose in the direction of the industrial zone. Sophia's phone rang immediately. It was Helen, her voice trembling with panic. "The main factory warehouse is on fire. Your father has just been taken to the hospital with heart attack symptoms." Gabriel reacted with surprising quickness. In a matter of minutes, he had organized transportation and made a series of calls, speaking in codes that Sophia couldn't understand. When they arrived at the Blackwell Industrial Complex, they were confronted with a chaotic scene. Firefighters fought against flames consuming the warehouse, where the most valuable raw materials and historical company documents were stored. To Sophia's astonishment, a private firefighting team was already on site, working with impressive Efficiency under directions that Gabriel transmitted through a radio communicator she didn't even know he possessed. "How did you—" she began, but was interrupted by Richard, who approached with his face contorted in a mask of theatrical concern. "What a terrible tragedy," he lamented, placing his hand on Sophia's shoulder. "Fortunately, I have digitized copies of all the important documents that were stored there." Gabriel intervened smoothly, removing Richard's hand from Sophia's shoulder. "Curious how the fire started exactly in the section where the original company founding documents were archived, don't you think?" Richard narrowed his eyes. "Are you insinuating something, Mr. Oliver?" "Just observing interesting coincidences," Gabriel replied, before walking away to coordinate the fire containment efforts. Thanks to the quick response and efficiency of the mysterious team summoned by Gabriel, the damage was significantly less than it could have been. Still, the historical archives area was completely destroyed. At the hospital, Sophia found August stabilized but deeply shaken. "The original documents, our family's history," he murmured, with tears in his eyes. "Calm down, Dad. What's important is that you're okay," Sophia consoled him, holding his wrinkled hand. "You don't understand," August insisted. "There were secrets there, things that need to be revealed before it's too late." Helen, who until then had maintained her composure, intervened firmly. "Now is not the time, August. You need to rest." The look they exchanged made it clear to Sophia that there was something important her parents were hiding. Back at the mansion, physically and emotionally exhausted, Sophia found Gabriel in her office, meticulously examining old family albums she didn't even know existed. "How did you get access to these?" she asked, surprised. "Your mother gave me permission," he answered, without taking his eyes off a particularly old photograph. "Interesting how certain physical characteristics persist through generations, don't you think?" Sophia approached to see the image. It was a photograph from 1930, showing two young men in front of a building under construction, the first Blackwell factory. One of them was clearly her great-grandfather, Anthony Blackwell. The other— "That man," she murmured, feeling a shiver run down her spine. There was something strangely familiar in the penetrating blue eyes that looked directly at the camera. "Manuel Oliver," Gabriel calmly informed. "Founding partner of Blackwell Enterprises, although you won't find mention of him in any current official company document." Sophia felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. "Oliver, like you?" Gabriel nodded slowly. "My grandfather." The revelation hit Sophia like lightning. Suddenly, everything began to make sense. The detailed knowledge about the company, the interest in keeping it under American control, the mysterious outings in the early hours of the morning. "Why didn't you tell me?" she questioned, torn between anger at the omission and fascination with the story that was beginning to unfold. "Because I needed to first understand what happened," Gabriel answered, carefully closing the album. "Why Manuel Oliver was completely erased from the official history of the company he helped found." In the following days, taking advantage of August's convalescence, Sophia dedicated herself to investigating every detail that Gabriel shared about his grandfather and the hidden history of Blackwell. She discovered that Manuel Oliver had been a brilliant engineer, responsible for technical innovations that catapulted the small initial metalworking shop to industrial giant status. The partnership with Anthony Blackwell seemed perfect, one with technical knowledge, the other with political and commercial contacts. "What went wrong?" asked Sophia, as they examined together old projects that Gabriel mysteriously possessed. "Patents," he answered simply. "Your great-grandfather registered innovations developed by my grandfather in his own name. When Manuel protested, he was gradually pushed away from management until being completely excluded in 1937. Sophia felt divided. That story tainted her family's legacy, but at the same time, there was an undeniable sense of truth in the words and documents that Gabriel presented. "So that's it? You married me to avenge your grandfather?" she questioned, an evident twinge of pain in her voice. Gabriel held her hands with surprising gentleness. "No, Sophia. I married you to restore the truth and recover what is legitimate, not to destroy what was built. Blackwell Enterprises is as much a part of my history as it is of yours. Something in the sincerity of that blue gaze, so similar to the man in the old photograph, made Sophia's heart accelerate in a way she hadn't expected to feel again so soon. That same night, while Gabriel was out on one of his mysterious commitments, Sophia decided to follow an impulse and search through his belongings. In the drawer of the desk in the guest room, she found an access card for a luxury condominium in Back Bay and a notebook with detailed notes about Blackwell's financial movements over the last 5 years. What intrigued her most, however, was a specific notation circled several times. Albert Mendez, monthly transfers, Cayman account, confirm connection with Richard. Albert Mendez, the oldest and most respected board member, her father's confidant for decades, could be betraying the Blackwell family's trust. The mere possibility made Sophia feel physically ill. Determined to discover the truth, she used the access card to visit Gabriel's apartment. What she found was a shocking contrast to the image of the simple man who had supported her on that fateful day. The apartment was an improvised office, with walls covered in documents, photographs, and diagrams, connected by colored wires, like in investigation movies. At the center of it all, a large framed photograph showed Manuel Oliver alongside his wife and a baby, Gabriel's father presumably. Below it, a folder with the confidential stamp contained detailed reports on Albert Mendez and his financial activities over recent years. Sophia was absorbed in reading the documents when she heard the sound of the door being opened. Gabriel entered the apartment and froze when he saw her there, surrounded by the evidence of his secret investigation. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice devoid of its usual serenity. "And you shouldn't be investigating board members behind my back," Sophia retorted, holding up the folder about Albert Mendez. "What is all this, Gabriel? What's your real plan?" Gabriel closed the door and walked slowly to the window, observing the illuminated city below. For a long moment, only silence filled the space between them. "When my father was on his deathbed, he made me promise 2 things, Gabriel finally began, his voice low and controlled. "To restore my grandfather's name in Blackwell's history and to prevent the company from being sold to foreigners. He believed that, despite everything, the company was still part of the Oliver legacy as much as the Blackwell legacy." Sophia listened attentively, sensing the contained emotion in those words. "I spent years studying every aspect of the company, every detail of its history. I graduated in engineering like my grandfather, specialized in business administration, worked in multinational companies to understand how hostile takeovers work." Gabriel turned to face her. "And then I discovered it wasn't just Richard who was planning to sell the company. Albert," whispered Sophia, the pieces of the puzzle beginning to fit together. Gabriel nodded. "Albert Mendez has been the real manipulator behind the scenes for more than a decade. It was he who first approached Nakamura to Blackwell. He who planted the idea in Richard's mind about the possibility of assuming controlling interest, and he who has systematically sabotaged innovation projects that would keep the company competitive without the need for foreign capital." Sophia felt as if the air had been sucked from her lungs. Albert was almost a second father to her, the advisor in whom her father placed blind trust. "Why?" she asked, her voice almost inaudible. "Money, power, revenge, the classic triad." Gabriel answered with a tired sigh. "He felt undervalued by your father, Sophia. August always treated him as an employee, never as the partner he believed he deserved to be." Sophia walked to the wall of evidence, studying the meticulously organized documents. "And the warehouse fire?" "His work, certainly. Probably to destroy any remaining evidence of the partnership between Anthony Blackwell and Manuel Oliver. What he didn't know is that my father had preserved copies of crucial documents." One photograph in particular caught Sophia's attention. Albert and Richard on a yacht, clearly in an intimate conversation, far from the eyes of the Blackwell family. "How long have you known all this?" she asked, feeling betrayed not only by Albert, but also by Gabriel's omission. "I suspected for years, confirmed shortly before our casual meeting," he finally admitted. Sophia felt her blood boil. Casual? You planned everything, didn't you? Even Edward's abandonment at the altar. Gabriel remained impassive in the face of the accusation. No, that was Richard and Albert's doing. I merely took advantage of the opportunity that presented itself. Manipulating me just like they did. Protecting you and the company that is also part of my legacy, he corrected firmly. If I had simply introduced myself as Manuel Oliver's grandson with accusations against your father's right-hand man, would you have believed me? The question hung in the air, and Sophia knew the answer. No, she would have dismissed his allegations as absurd, instinctively protecting those she considered family. What do you intend to do now? She questioned after a long silence. Originally, I planned to gather enough evidence to expose Albert and Richard, force a public acknowledgement of my grandfather's contribution, and negotiate a position on the board to protect the Oliver legacy, Gabriel answered with surprising honesty. But now? Now what? Pressed Sophia. Gabriel approached her, his blue eyes reflecting a vulnerability she had never seen before. Now I realize there's more at stake than just names on corporate documents or positions on boards of directors. Sophia's heart involuntarily accelerated. Despite her anger at the manipulation, she couldn't deny the connection that had formed between them in recent weeks. The professional respect, mutual admiration, and something deeper that neither had named yet. Are you going to expose Albert? She asked, returning to the practical question to escape the intensity of that moment. We're going to expose him, Gabriel corrected, if you still want to work with me after this revelation. Sophia stepped back, needing space to process everything she had discovered. I need to think. This is too much to absorb at once. Gabriel nodded, respecting her need for distance. I understand. But know that, regardless of your decision, the evidence against Albert and Richard is at your disposal. It was never my intention to harm the company or your family, Sophia. In the days that followed, Sophia kept her distance from Gabriel, taking refuge in a friend's house to reflect. His absence, ironically, only amplified his presence in her thoughts. August, recovering at home, noticed the change in his daughter's behavior. What happened between you and Gabriel? He asked during an afternoon when Sophia was visiting him. He's not who we thought he was, Dad, she replied, still uncertain about how much to reveal. August studied her with tired but perceptive eyes. None of us is exactly who others think, sweetheart. The question is he someone you respect despite his imperfections? The question struck Sophia deeply. Yes, despite the initial manipulation, she respected Gabriel's intelligence, his dedication to the company, his strategic vision, and more than that, she admired his determination to honor his family's memory, even if his methods were questionable. There's something you and your mother should know, continued August, interrupting her thoughts. Something about the founding of Blackwell that I've kept for too long. With a weak but firm voice, August confirmed much of what Gabriel had revealed. Manuel Oliver had indeed been fundamental to the company's initial success, contributing revolutionary technical innovations. The rupture had occurred not just because of patent disputes, as Gabriel believed, but because of a tragic love triangle involving Anthony Blackwell, Manuel Oliver, and the woman they both loved. Anthony couldn't bear losing Elisa to Manuel, explained August. Wounded pride transformed into business vengeance. The patents were just the beginning. Then came maneuvers to push Manuel away from management, campaigns to discredit him in industrial circles, until he was completely erased from the official history. Sophia listened, stunned. Generations of hurt feelings, secrets and resentments had shaped the destiny of two families and a company that employed thousands. Why didn't you ever tell this before? She asked. August sighed heavily. Shame, perhaps, or fear of tarnishing the family legacy. When I discovered the truth in my father's documents, I had already been the company president for decades. I felt that revealing everything would bring more harm than good. And what about Albert? Asked Sophia, testing the waters. August's expression hardened. What about him? Sophia hesitated but decided on the truth. She showed her father some of the evidence Gabriel had collected about Albert's betrayal and his long conspiracy with Richard to facilitate the company's sale. The initial shock gave way to determination in August's tired eyes. "Call a board meeting for tomorrow. It's time to clean house." The extraordinary board meeting of Blackwell Enterprises began under a climate of palpable tension. All directors were present, including Richard, who displayed a confident smile, and Albert, whose usual expression of paternal calm seemed slightly forced. To everyone's surprise, August Blackwell personally attended, supported by a cane and Helen's arm. At his side, Sophia remained erect and determined. Gabriel entered last, carrying a voluminous folder. "Ladies and gentlemen," August began, his voice stronger than one might expect from a man recently out of a cardiac crisis. "I've called this meeting to correct historical errors and ensure the future of Blackwell Enterprises as an American company, independent and faithful to the visions of its founders, Anthony Blackwell and Manuel Oliver." The name provoked surprised murmurs around the table. Albert adjusted uncomfortably in his chair. "Manuel Oliver?" questioned one of the younger directors. "I've never heard that name." "Exactly," responded August, "and that's the first injustice I intend to correct today." Turning to Gabriel, he extended his hand in a formal gesture. "Mr. Oliver, as a representative of the Blackwell family, I offer my sincere apologies for the unworthy treatment your grandfather received from my father and for the subsequent attempt to erase his fundamental contribution to this company." Gabriel, visibly moved, accepted the handshake under the astonished gaze of those present. "The second issue," continued August, his tone hardening, "concerns the loyalty and integrity of this board." Turning to Albert, he fixed him with a penetrating look. "Albert Mendez, you have served this company for almost 4 decades. We trusted you as an advisor, mentor, and friend, and during all this time, you were planning our ruin." Albert paled, but maintained his composure. "I don't know what you're talking about, August. That accusation is absurd and offensive." Gabriel then opened his folder, distributing copies of carefully organized documents, bank statements from accounts in tax havens, records of secret meetings with Nakamura executives dating back 3 years, suspicious transfers coinciding with strategic decisions harmful to the company, coded communications with Richard Mitchell about the acquisition operation. With each new evidence presented, Albert's expression deteriorated. Richard, in turn, stood up abruptly. "This is a farce, a desperate attempt by this imposter to gain control of the company," he vociferated, pointing at Gabriel. "Mr. Mitchell," Sophia intervened with controlled coolness, "perhaps you'd like to explain why your name appears as the beneficiary of million-dollar transfers originating from a Nakamura subsidiary on the same dates that you coincidentally presented reports depreciating the value of our assets." The room plunged into a stunned silence as the directors examined the evidence. Albert, realizing the futility of continued denials, slowly stood up. "You never truly valued my contributions," he declared, the mask of loyalty finally falling to reveal years of accumulated resentment. "I was always treated as a glorified employee, never as an equal partner. Does that justify betraying the trust of a family that treated you as one of their own for decades?" questioned Helen, breaking her usual silence in business meetings. Richard, sensing that the game was lost, tried a desperate exit. "All of this is illegal. These evidences were obtained without authorization. They have no legal validity." "Perhaps not in a court of law, cousin," responded Sophia calmly, "but they certainly have validity in this boardroom. And as for legality," she smiled slightly, "the team of independent investigators we hired to verify these evidences works in strict accordance with the law. Their findings, including records of suspicious transfers and compromising communications, have already been forwarded to the competent authorities." The next few hours were dedicated to a complete restructuring of the board. Albert and Richard were formally removed from their positions, with administrative and criminal proceedings being prepared against both. The Nakamura acquisition proposal was officially rejected, with an explanatory note about the fraudulent circumstances under which it had been negotiated. At the end of the meeting, August made an announcement that surprised even Sophia. As part of our reorganization and in recognition of the historical contribution of the Oliver family, I propose the creation of a co-chairmanship of the board to be occupied by Sophia Blackwell and Gabriel Oliver, thus formalizing not only their personal marriage but also the union of our business lineages. Sophia looked at Gabriel, seeking in his eyes the reaction to this unexpected proposal. What she found was a mixture of surprise, gratitude, and something deeper, a silent question about whether this business arrangement could also reflect a more personal and genuine union. In the following weeks, the Blackwell Oliver Enterprises, as it was officially renamed, began a new phase of prosperity. The complete history of its founding was restored, with a permanent exhibition in the headquarters lobby, honoring both Anthony Blackwell and Manuel Oliver as visionaries who together built an industrial empire. Gabriel and Sophia developed an extraordinarily effective professional partnership, complementing skills and visions in a way that surprised even the most skeptical. But the unresolved question of the future of their personal relationship still hung between them. One night, while they were working late in Sophia's office at the Blackwell mansion, Gabriel finally addressed the issue they had both been avoiding. Our initial agreement anticipated the annulment of the marriage once the crisis was overcome, he reminded her, observing Sophia attentively. The crisis has been overcome. Sophia looked up from the documents she was analyzing, meeting Gabriel's gaze. Technically, yes. And what about our matrimonial arrangement? He asked, his casual tone contradicting the intensity of his look. Sophia took a deep breath, gathering courage for the honesty that the moment required. At first, I saw our marriage only as a practical solution to an urgent problem. Later, when I discovered your hidden motives, I felt betrayed, manipulated. Gabriel nodded, accepting the criticism without defensiveness. Understandable. But, now she continued, carefully choosing her words, I realized that perhaps fate or chance or whatever force put us on that same park bench that day was wiser than we were. A discreet smile began to form on Gabriel's lips. Are you saying you wish to maintain our matrimonial agreement? Sophia stood up and walked to the window, observing the garden illuminated by moonlight. I'm saying that perhaps we can transform a convenience contract into something more authentic. Something built not on necessity or revenge, but on mutual respect, admiration, and perhaps other feelings that have been growing between us. Gabriel joined her by the window, maintaining a respectful distance. Other feelings? Sophia turned to face him, finally allowing herself to admit what her heart had known for weeks. I believe I'm falling in love with you, Gabriel Oliver, not with the man you pretended to be when we met, nor with the vengeful heir who planned to restore his family's legacy, but with the man I've come to know during these months. Brilliant, determined, passionate about what he does, and surprisingly, capable of forgiving historical errors for the sake of a better future. Gabriel's expression softened, the mask of self-control finally falling to reveal the vulnerability behind his confident facade. Sophia Blackwell, when I found you that day, I had a meticulously elaborated plan. What I didn't plan was that you, with your strength, intelligence, and compassion, would knock down all my defenses and make me question not only my methods but my very objectives. Slowly, as if fearing to break the fragile moment, Gabriel took Sophia's hands in his. I'm falling in love with you too, and if you're willing, I'd like to build something new, not just a company, but a life together, not out of obligation or strategy, but by choice. In the garden of the Blackwell mansion, under the same starry sky that had witnessed their hasty marriage months before, Sophia and Gabriel renewed their vows, this time not as strangers united by desperate circumstances, but as partners who chose to walk together, intertwining their personal destinies just as their families had intertwined their business legacies decades before. The Blackwell Oliver Enterprises flourished under their joint leadership, becoming an example of innovation and ethical management in the American business landscape. Richard faced charges for corporate fraud and market manipulation. Albert, after cooperating with the investigations, received a lighter sentence, although his reputation was irreparably tarnished. The marriage that began as a convenience agreement transformed into the foundation of a true partnership in business and in life. The matrimonial clause that seemed an archaic relic and a cruel obstacle revealed itself, ironically, as the catalyst for the reunion of two families separated by pride and silence, and for the rebirth of a company that now honored its complete history. Together, Sophia and Gabriel proved that the strongest bonds are not those imposed by contracts or traditions, but those we choose to create and nurture daily, transforming chance into destiny and adversaries into allies. The legacy of both families was not only restored, but reinvented, not as two parallel stories, but as a single narrative of redemption, healing, and love that transcends generations. Dear listeners, we hope that Sophia and Gabriel's story has touched your hearts. To continue this journey of emotions, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories that explore the themes of redemption, family secrets, and unexpected loves. Find it here, clicking on the left. If this narrative about intertwined destinies and second chances moved you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Daily, we bring unique stories that explore the complexities of life, love, and human relationships. And you, have you ever experienced a situation where an apparent disaster transformed into the beginning of something wonderful? Share your experiences,